So this next talk is from Tom Gamblin. Tom is the director of Evident, an amazing creative agency based in Cornwall in the UK. In this session, he's going to be diving into how artificial intelligence can help designers to create new products through a new set of tooling and systems which are coming our way any day now. Enjoy.
Hi everyone, thank you for joining me today on this talk. My name's Tom Gamblin, and today I'm going to be talking a little bit about redefining digital experience with AI-driven products. Just to give a bit of background into me and to kind of explain why I'm doing this talk. So, like I said, my name's Tom Gamblin. I am the co-director of Evident, which is a enterprise-level product design agency. I've been working in digital product design for around 12 years now, and recently there's been a big shift, and we've slowly started to, but we've basically moved ourselves into more of a specialism around digital transformation for enterprise. So big platform design, and I guess the question around what does enterprise mean for us? Enterprise is basically products that deliver a kind of multiple facet experience, and that might be that there's multiple departments that have functionality that exist within the system, or there's multiple different user types. And yeah, so there are basically the platforms we work on are generally relatively large scale. Percentages. So as a company that focuses really heavily within the enterprise space, we love to work with percentages. It's something that, in terms of data, our goal in every single project that we work in is to understand what the percentage variable is that we're looking at. So that might be that we're working on a new product. If that's the case, then we might be trying to understand kind of what the conversion rate is that we're looking to achieve, what are the targets, what are the goals, what's the benchmark that we're looking to set for it. And on the other hand, it might be an existing product. So we might be looking at trying to identify the percentage increase that we're looking to make based on changes that we're looking to introduce or to part of the whatever platform or module that we're looking to refine. So yeah, just in short, we love working percentages. Is what we aim for. In order for us to do that, data is a massive part of how we work. And one thing that I'll come on to design as a design industry and design process in a little bit, but we like to basically work on the back of evidence, and we like to be able to justify decisions at Evident. And one thing that we've always tried to use, and we've tried to set it as a bit of a company mantra, is that we always try to put data over assumptions, and we do this all day, every day. It's something that kind of stands out, and we pride ourselves on basically sticking to that. So today, what to expect? Like I mentioned before, there is an AI element to this, which I'll definitely you'll see very heavily within this conversation, within this chat that we're doing. But what is AI? We're going to start by just kind of breaking this down into layman's terms. I don't intend on this being a very technical talk in any way. I'm not an overly technical person, and I much prefer to communicate in a way which everyone can understand. Being a designer, that's the way I like to work. So what is AI? The process of design. So that's process of design as it is nowadays in the industry. Looking into some of the things that have happened, some of the advances that we've made. And then looking into what can AI actually bring to us as designers. So that's probably one of the biggest questions that we've all got. And hopefully the case studies and things like that I provided will give some clarity to how we're seeing it at Evident. And then lastly, adapting for better experience. So how does this actually work in application? How does it work in kind of our roles? How does it work in our jobs? And how do we see it actually being implemented into products? So we can just jump straight in, to be honest. What is AI? I think there's a lot of confusion around AI, and that's probably quite natural considering it feels like it's a very new thing. And I think the best way is to kind of really fundamentally just break down what it is and what it isn't. So if we touch on what it isn't before we touch on what it is, what it really isn't, or what I should say, what it probably isn't. And the reason why I'm saying probably is because as things advance, and we might see these examples, and we might see that down the line, artificial intelligence or machine learning might actually become integrated into these kind of these examples that I've pulled out. Firstly, so chatbots. Commercially, we rarely we've seen the integration of chatbots. We've seen messenger chatbots. We're dealing with quite a bit of an advancement maybe in live chat that we're working with. But the reality is that it's based off of business logic and a mapping of decisions that you make. So rarely will you be able to ask a bot a question which is just completely free flowing and it be able to provide a really accurate answer. It normally needs to refine it. That's why on this example here, just illustrative, you can see that there are two options: ask info, book a flight. It starts to it has to be based off of actions that you actually provide to it. So it's trying to make you make a decision. But like I said earlier, this is not to say that AI won't end up here somewhere. The other thing we're not talking about is we're not really talking about robots. This isn't like the AI that we're dealing with. It's not the Terminator. I think a lot of people have these kind of weird pictures in their mind around AI, and when you say AI to someone, they tend to think of iRobot or a Black Mirror episode. So those are the things we're not going to really be dealing with today. And now we'll go into what it is. So this I feel is like a really nice kind of explanation of what artificial intelligence really is. Artificial intelligence is a collection of advanced technologies that allow machines to sense, comprehend, act, and learn. So that to me, again, it's still quite high level, but I think that it kind of frames it in a very nice way. I've broken it down a little bit further into a way this is something that I've actually seen before, seen someone else actually provide this kind of breakdown, and I think it's really great, and it makes a lot of sense to me. So data science equals insights, machine learning equals predictions, and artificial intelligence equals actions. That to me is like the way that I try to fundamentally look at these things. There are probably a lot of if there are technical people watching this, then sorry, please don't scream at the screen. I don't mean to be sort of overly simple or layman terms about these things. I just think it's great in terms of a designer's perspective to be able to really understand kind of the basics of what this is. So that was AI, or like a really, really sort of basic breakdown of what it is, or the way that I'm personally seeing it. And I think the next place to really get to is real talk on design. So the design industry as a whole at the moment, we've actually seen some really big advances. We've seen some cool new tools appear. We've got Sketch, Figma, InVision, all of these companies that are popping up, which, are fantastic in terms of the way that we can apply our process and the fact that we can actually use it to hopefully structure a more systematic way of designing. However, designers and engineers, they do like to make assumptions. And apologies to any engineers, I have shoehorned you in there as well. So, and I think that the one thing that going back to things of the tools that we use, it's really interesting to see how quickly we all download the newest tool, the newest XD, and have a play with it. And we don't tend to resist it. However, I think we don't often see designers getting really excited about a new data set that's available in Google Analytics or something like that. So the other thing about designers and the design industry is that we make mistakes. This is obviously a bit of a confusing image to look at. This is an element on a form, but from a UX point of view, we're not always testing. So obviously we have seen the advancement of user testing, and I would hope that this sort of thing would get picked up if things got tested and there was data to just flag the fact that it wasn't necessarily a successful design element that sits in here. But like I say, everyone, like the design industry as a whole is kind of a work in progress, and the biggest companies in the world make mistakes. So we've probably all kind of seen the frustration that comes from these companies that have a massive reach and have kind of worldwide product usage, and a simple mistake can cause a bit of an uproar. So I guess the big question, why is a designer talking about AI, and what how does it really impact me or us as an industry really? To me, I think that AI really provides us opportunity, and hopefully by the end of this talk you'll feel the same, based on the case studies and the things that I go and talk through later on. I think that the reality as well is that designers need data, or that we should be basing our decisions off of data, not off of the trends that exist in the industry. Then it was not based off of Dribble or Behance or anything like that. We should be crafting experiences and human-centered interaction based off of real evidence or real patterns that we can see in data. And this here is a quote which has kind of stood with me for quite a long time, and it really resonates, the data point I just made around that. Creativity without strategy is called art, and I wouldn't necessarily suggest that any one of us as a digital designer would really see ourselves as being artists. A lot of the decisions that we hope make a really positive impact on the system that we're working on, the app that we're working on, or any kind of web-based product. But Josh Clark did a talk, and he said this, and I feel like it kind of captures it all in one for me as to where I see this going. We've built businesses off of mobile first, responsive design, and I think, in my opinion, I see AI as being our new design material, and it will provide us with an absolute wealth of information, and it also is going to really refactor the way that we see our jobs, and the way that we actually approach design, which hopefully I'll cover later. So, adapting for a better experience. Excuse me. Another big question I think that everyone probably has is how might AI actually impact digital experiences, and how do we see that kind of starting to integrate? I think that the way that I've tried to do is I've broken down a few aspects of AI and machine learning, to kind of just to show where there are potential, and where hopefully designers and UX designers will be able to see where and resonate where I see there being massive potential of what we could actually do and introduce into user experiences. So the first one we're going to look at is recommendation. The first two, the recommendation and the next one, I probably won't spend a huge amount of time on, mainly because it's probably going to feel relatively familiar. You'll probably recognize some of it. It's actually really quite widely used commercially. So recommendation, Spotify is a great example of how this works. Discover Weekly, the Made for You functionality that they have in their system. Obviously, this is using kind of multiple elements of AI or machine learning, and what it's actually doing is it's providing a success and failure process in the background. So there will be some parameters that have been set that basically allow the system to decide whether, if you listen to the whole song, if you listen to it more than once, it provides a weighting on whether that type of song, the way that, and the songs that are actually related to that, and the songs that other users probably listen to, and so basically they're pulling together a fairly consistent format of a recommendation based on just usage. And I think one of the really beautiful things about the way that this works is that it enhances the experience. So it brings people back to the platform. I'm sure in everyone's jobs and companies that we talk about, especially if you run a kind of product, is that we deal with retention. And I think that this sort of element and the way that Spotify have integrated this is a really nice way of actually getting people to interact, and it opens up a new door of usage, because we're seeing people, you're actually starting to discover new music that the likelihood is that you might actually enjoy it. So I think this is a really good example of how that works. The next one is prediction. We've probably all engaged with a bit of prediction. It's really prevalent. We see it. We have it in our phones, and more than often, I think everyone's probably has interacted with this probably on a daily basis. So this is a really interesting example as well. I actually personally think that the way that Gmail have done their prediction is really nice. And again, based on the fact of there being a success and failure, this will be tracking in the background. It will be providing feedback to the AI so that it knows whether you continue to type. It knows whether you jump and actually complete the sentence based on the suggestion it's given you, and it allows it to learn, and it allows it to really take steps to actually become more accurate going forward. Classification. So classification and the next one, again, very similar. This is probably, in my opinion, where confusion really starts to grow within the AI space, is that there are a lot of very small nuances between what we're dealing with, and many of the products that actually integrate AI, they tend to use a kind of bit of a mixture. So we're going through one at a time, but sort of I'll go through an example in a minute where it actually shows a bit of a combination of the two. So classification. Classification is basically supervised learning. So it's supervised learning based on a foundation data set that a human has already provided. So we set the rules, and then the AI kind of follows it, and it works out and it trains itself off the back of it. So this, I think, is a really great example of how AI and how classification can really be powerfully used. So here, Google Forms. I don't know if anyone's actually had any experience with this. If you have, I'd love to hear from you on it, because this to me is a relatively unknown element. And so what's happening is you're free typing a question, and off the back of the actual keywords that you use, the AI is starting to provide suggestions based on an answer set. So there are a couple of things I think are really interesting about the way this is done, and what it can offer to us as designers. So because platforms such as Google, or even these kind of sub platforms such as Google Forms, I think that they attract such a large user base. So it's dealing with very enterprise level product design. But what they're doing is they are isolating the data set. So the designers have the ability to actually control whether there needs to be a different type of data capture provided off the back of a question that's been put in. It's going to be tracking whether they use the suggestion, whether they go and actually just use the drop down on the right to actually decide what they want to decide on for themselves, for their own choice. And I think that this could provide us this is a great example of how fluid potentially conversion-based forms could be. Insurance journeys of the like. I think that we're constantly trying to make things more seamless, and in my opinion, this is a really great example of something that does that job really well. Clustering. So before, obviously, classification was supervised learning, so supervised, and clustering is unsupervised. So what it does, this probably looks a little bit hectic here, but the way that clustering works is that we provide a set of parameters as the humans that are involved in this. So we provide a set of parameters, and then what the clustering does and what the machine does is it actually starts to identify similarities between each of these pieces of data, and it starts to segregate them. And I think that one thing that is really interesting about this is that if you think of this on a very large scale, you look at like healthcare, security. This is the sort of thing that gets used in facial recognition security. So I think that I think that there is a massive scope of how clustering potentially could work and how it could really efficiently provide us like a completely different experiences and completely different technologies. Retail is another really good example. This sort of thing, if you, as a retailer, you might be able to identify someone that's just browsing your online shop, and you might be able to identify someone that's actually likely to spend money based on a percentage. So it might allow us as designers to actually provide a completely different incentivized experience for someone that is more likely to spend money, which again provides us something which is more targeted, more isolated in terms of we are just trying to improve the percentage success that we have in that user journey. And you've got to remember as well is that these things obviously as they train, they are becoming more accurate. Another big one, in my opinion, of how clustering can really help. So accessibility, we've worked in accessibility for quite a while, and it's for us it's a real passion of trying to do what we can to actually raise the level of accessibility that we can provide in products. The web as a whole is a nightmare of accessibility, in my opinion. I think that it would, in my opinion, I think it would probably be something that ends up being regulated. But I think, in terms of accessibility and how AI can really impact that, sign language, automation, the ability for the clustering to actually image map or image recognize some, based on like a video or, a flat image, and it be able to provide an alt text which might not necessarily be available, or might not necessarily have been put into a CMS or something like that, which obviously has a massive impact on in visually impaired people. And the other thing is around, like language translation and captioning for people that, they have harder reading. So I think that there is a massive potential with the introduction of AI, and the way that I think companies are going to use it is that we might have the ability to make the web accessible, which would be for a lot of, in my opinion, it should be one of the biggest goals that we all have, and it's in my opinion, it's a requirement of product design. The next one, generation. So this is quite a cool one, and there's a cool video to explain how it works. Generation is based on two AIs, kind of they are pitted against each other, so they kind of interrogate each other. And what it allows them to do is it allows them to become more accurate based on the results that each one of them finds. So a really nice way of looking at this is like, imagine having two AIs playing table tennis against each other. It's just the machines are going to be learning every single shot that gets made. And I think that this for me has been a really good example of basically these networks working together, and that's what generation is. Multiple networks actually working together and learn off each other. So here, you can see 3 different drones which are actually being powered by networks, understanding how to move, how much power, how much velocity needs to be put into each one of these movements that they're making as an actual unit, which I think is fascinating. So I think one of the biggest questions that a lot of designers have is, how does this actually translate into, the way that I work, what I do? And, I feel like as a company and as a designer and a business owner, I always ask myself the same. So, I think that just using a couple of examples of more design specific examples here, I think it's a really good way of actually showing how a slight mixture of the AI elements we've just looked at can actually impact very directly on our process and what it can do for us. So Wizard is a tool which you can low fidelity sketch an app interface, very roughly kind of lay out how you want it to be. You've got things like a burger navigation, looks like a yes no kind of tick yes no selection down here, maybe an input, maybe a button and some text. So obviously from our point of view, we're as designers, we're quite comfortable seeing this kind of thing. This is, we probably all sketch these kind of things day in, day out. So if I just show you how this works, basically a picture's taken of it from your phone, and then the application actually provides a high fidelity version of it. And it's really interesting the way this has worked. It's obviously what it's pulling in is a mixture between clustering and generation. So what it's doing is it's trying to recognize what you've done as a sketch, and it is mapping to what it sees as being the most accurate outcome, which is based off of a sketch library. So obviously the sketch library is all pre-built. It's built as a design system, which we'll come on to in a minute, and it allows you to it pretty much picks up the most accurate element that sits in there. So you can see that in terms of how accurate it became. I've lost it. Sorry. It pulls out. It has buttons. It has inputs. It's actually really quite accurate. So I guess another question you probably all have is, you look at it like, that kind of product might replace what I do. And I think that that's probably the wrong way to look at it. As designers, we do resist, parts of the process becoming quicker, mainly because I think that we don't want it to feel threatened. We're very precious around our design process. So I think that the way to look at it is that we shouldn't be resistant to products that come in and do legwork for us. And I'll explain a little bit of that in a minute. So just talking about design systems, as I mentioned just a minute ago in Wizard, and I should say that I believe Radislav from Wizard is actually doing a talk, so make sure you check that out. I think it'll be fascinating. But just going back to design systems, so like I said, the Wizard uses a component library to actually pull together these and try and map to the most defined outcome that hopefully has been designed in the library. So design systems are amazing. If you're not working in design systems, you really should be. And what this allows you to actually be as a designer is more of an architect. You're building a library which is based off of something that you're being consistent around elements. The typography is all the same. You have different usage of dark, light UI, and I think that the way that we construct these design systems is really important, and I think that it will be the way that things move in the future. Big companies are already using them. So Airbnb. If you imagine you have an application like Wizard and you have the ability to link it into your own design system, it moves the responsibility of doing the grunt work into a machine, which in my opinion is a great thing for us to start to understand, that our jobs as designers becomes far more related to problem solving and to actually understanding the interaction of what we're looking to achieve with a user. So impact in behavior design, I think is something that gets overlooked a lot. And like I say, pushing the pixels and things like that, it's great and satisfying for some, but I think as designers we should be more focused around actually solving problems for people. So yeah, like I mentioned legwork there. So I think that AI will, for us as designers, start doing the legwork for us, and we shouldn't resist that in any way, because it's not a case of we're losing parts of it. There'll be some really interesting elements to how we deal with AI coming into our process, and I think what you've got to remember is if AI comes in and does legwork for us, it means that our time gets refocused into solving problems, actually strategizing the approach as to how you want a user to interact and how you want that customer-centric experience to feel, as opposed to actually having to construct each one of these artboards with the different elements on it. You can actually get it into a testable prototype much quicker. So just to recap that, from my point of view, we should care about the outcome, not the grunt work. And what I feel that will happen is, I think that AI will potentially take the grunt work from us, or it will at least support a more efficient process around doing it. And I think if we structure it, and as designers, if we are systematic of how we work and how we put together design systems, that we will be able to really utilize how AI can automate elements for us. So, like I feel like I've probably covered this point, but I think a designer's role is going to change off the back of AI, and I don't think it's going to be for the bad. I think that we'll see a shift from designers actually having to sit and put together comps and things like that to them being seen more as an architect or for a chef or an engineer. I think that we need to be the ones that are we're the ones that decide what needs to be in the recipe, as opposed to and that's obviously based off of us knowing and having more information and more data from these AI aspects that we hopefully will have within our toolkit. So I think there's going to be a massive reduce in dead time for us as designers, and there'll be an increased time in things like user testing. It gets massively overlooked, and I think one of the beautiful things about our jobs as designers is that we do have the ability to get our concepts in front of users as prototypes and see them use it and actually get real data and real feedback around what they think. I think for many years it's been missed. I feel like it's something that doesn't get dealt with by even smaller product teams. I think it's absolutely crucial, and I think that, as I mentioned earlier, that reducing dead time will just be a case of it refactoring how our role works and what we actually use our time for. It's not threatening it, but I do think that it's going to allow us to basically just shuffle and kind of refactor how we end up spending our time on project work. And again, Josh Clark coming back with another nice quote and saying that our job as designers is really to set expectation and channel behavior. And in my opinion, the color of the button and things like that's not always going to make or break someone's experience, but the actual behavior that you are providing off the back of an experience will definitely be the thing that ends up converting or not. So I guess to round up, I think that we need to look at how do we really comfortably work with machines going forward as designers. I see this. I see a massive opportunity. I see this split, which I think will be a really healthy breakdown of how we work. And I think that humans will always be able to do what they do best, which is dealing with human-centered interaction and emotive design. What are we actually trying to achieve, and what do we want someone to feel off the back of something that they're actually designing. And machines will do what they do best, and that's process data faster than we can, and they'll be able to provide more insights that will allow us to actually create better experiences. I think that there will be a mixing pot that we all come into, and I think that we will see just more tools being added to our belt as designers, and I think that we will see a step up in how we actually apply ourselves as designers. That's all from me. Thank you so much for joining the conference today, and thank you to FutureSync for doing what they can to keep this on in the current environment. Follow me on Twitter. Do please reach out, and I'll catch you next time. Thank you.